Teachers have joined nurses, firemen, train drivers in the ongoing strikes here in the UK, and whilst the cost of living crisis continues to hold the public in its grip as we enter the second year of its presence. We're live in the Eldon Hub studio to discuss the impact, effects and more here on Agree to Disagree. Hello and welcome to Agree to Disagree, the show in which my guest panel discusses 3 topics about they have found themselves in the eye of the media storm. Today's panel will be tackling ideas surrounding striking, parenting and the cost of living crisis. So let's meet them. Over to my left here we have Professor Lincoln Garrity, a Professor of Media and Culture, and joining him we have Suzanne Taylor, a PhD student here at Portsmouth University. And on to my right over the table over here, we have Jasmine Stubbins, a parent and student at Portsmouth University. And next to Jasmine, we have Stephen Pinhorn, a journalism student. Welcome all, thank you all for your time. How are you all doing?
Good, thank you.
There's smiles, there's nodding. We're in good moods at the minute before the fight begins. No, they'll be fine, they'll be fine. Now, the Office of National Statistics have revealed that more than 843,000 working days were lost in December of last year across numerous sectors, including the NHS, rail and teaching. Today, our panel of debaters will be discussing whether they're necessary or even fair. But first, this week, I had a look around Portsmouth to explore the who and the why of the UK's turbulent strikes. Portsmouth, a historic waterfront city, the only island city in the UK. With a strong shopping scene and home to over 200,000 residents, it too has felt the impact of the nationwide strikes. But why are these strikes happening and who's behind them? We're outside Portsmouth Southsea Station in the heart of Portsmouth, and when it comes to the rail strikes, smaller stations such as this are no stranger to disruptions, cancellations and their impacts. The dispute, of course, is over pay, as well as job cuts and changes to employee terms and conditions. And according to the BBC, the rail industry is under pressure to save money following the pandemic, with Network Rail planning to cut a staggering 1,900 jobs as part of changes to the way its maintenance team works. At such a perilous time for the rail industry, the railway union RMT disagrees with the planned changes and wants a guarantee of no compulsory redundancies. Interestingly though, despite the demand for security and the added bonus of a pay rise, the Office for National Statistics finds that the average rail employee earns over £40,000 a year, with the average salary of rail workers in 2022 being £45,919, based on 5 different job categories. However, the RMT claim that figure is still too high as the ONS do not include relevant cleaning staff under rail employees. Further into the city, it's evident in how this affects local residents and the wider community. Here on Commercial Road, one of the busiest high streets in the city, strikes are also having a toll on the medical sector. Members of the British Medical Association have too been involved in a series of strikes and walkouts over pay and disputes in England, Scotland and Wales. Therefore, places like the Uni City Medical Centre, which provide a service to many here, are facing difficulties. Students at the University of Portsmouth have been dealing with absent lecturers due to ongoing strikes among unions, including universities under the UCEA body, due to another dispute over pay. The UCEA recognised the urgent inflationary pressures currently facing all staff and said it had made a final pay offer between 5% and 8% from August 2023. Members of the UCU, among other unions, have staged over 2 weeks' worth of strikes, impacting student and education and experience. So, what do you think? Have the strikes been of use, or are they simply disrupting society? Now, we've learnt more about the details of the national strikes and walkouts. Let's jump straight into our first discussion. So, I'm going to kick off this conversation. We're going to have any thoughts from anyone who has first-hand experience with the strikes, and this experience could be with doctors, rail strikes, the university. I'm going to start with my left here with you guys. What do you think?
Well, for me, the train strikes were the most detrimental to my life because I have to take the train into work. And when the train strikes are on, then I have to get the Solent Ranger bus, the X4, and then I have to take that to work. But because it's it's such a long journey that the earliest bus is the 8 o'clock, but it doesn't bring me into work until about 10:15, and I'm due to start work at 9:30. So I lose 15 minutes worth of wages every time that there's a strike on, and so it does affect my personal wages. And the other thing is that in December, I was due to give a paper at a very important archaeological conference in Edinburgh, and the week that I was supposed to be traveling was one of the weeks of the rail strikes. And so I had to take a National Express bus all the way to Edinburgh and back. So that was 12 hours going and 12 hours coming back. And as I was saying to a lot of my friends, that it took me longer to get to Edinburgh from Portsmouth than it does when I fly home to Vancouver, Canada.
Wow.
So
See, it's difficult when you have that kind of situation and then trying to understand the other side at the same time. But on my right here, Stephen, have you had a similar personal experience of any of this?
Yeah, I got caught short a bit. I was meant to be going on holiday to Amsterdam. Thankfully, I did go in the summer, but that was the week of rail strikes. I nearly missed all my flights and everything because the trains got cancelled. And NHS as well. However, I think these days it's hard to distinguish between what's strike action in the NHS and what's just been underfunding for 10 years, because, I mean, waiting lists are huge anyway.
There's different types of top commentary there as well behind our growing governments and things like that. But let's keep it to the right here. What would you say that strike is somewhat unfair to those not striking? Does it have a knock-on effect in the long term? Justin, start with you on your thoughts on that.
I mean, honestly, I can see how it's an inconvenience to people and I can completely empathise, but from my perspective, I feel like strikes are really important, especially coming from public sector workers. I mean, I think like sort of your teachers, your doctors, things like that should be the gold standard for employment in this country. And when you see the way that they're being treated, if they're not going to be treated fairly, what chance do sort of people on minimum wages or zero-hour contracts have? So I think whilst we're being inconvenienced, perhaps maybe everybody should go and join them. Or, there could be another method
and
to
do we
make
agree,
that work.
disagree with this side? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I would certainly agree with Jasmine about it shines a light on the inequalities people have been suffering for decades now under certain, and I'm not just talking about recent government, but previous governments. And I haven't had extreme cases like Suzanne, but a little bit of inconvenience to sort of prove a point maybe I'm willing to put up with. Like, for example, I had to get to London for a pre-booked theatre show, and I thought, well, the strikes are on, there's no chance taking or risking it, so I went up the night before, used the coach to make sure it was an extra expense on my part, pay for a hotel, but that peace of mind was important.
A bit.
Yeah,
sure. And to stay with you, Leek, do you think people are striking for the right reason? I mean, you're a lecturer yourself. This might be more of a specific question for you with being a lecturer here and the unions and the universities are striking. What do you think about being fair?
Yeah, no, the unions have taken action here, and it's a national strike, and for the first time in a long while, the University of Portsmouth union was fully behind the strikes, and as part of the union, I support them. I would also sort of point out that, again, within the sort of university higher education sector, like Jasmine said, we're not striking just for higher wages for professors and lecturers. It's about part-time staff who don't have the right sort of protection and permanency and zero-hour contracts. And that's something that the unions are keen to point out.
Interesting. And so to the open floor here, we'll go back to the right here, but all can pitch in. Is there a simple resolution for these striking? Could more already been done or avoided?
So in, I believe it's Norway, it's kind of on a related tangent. It was as a result of restrictions that people were protesting, so a sort of similar vein. But farmers were having restrictions placed on them, and so they created a political party. And I believe the whole country sort of voted for this political party to get in, and that's overcome the issues that they were facing. So, I mean, maybe if the whole country were to organise and get behind it and support the people rather than feeling inconvenienced, that could bring about a worthy resolution.
Interesting. Yes, Stephen, do you have any similar thoughts?
I think it's pretty hard, really, with it all, because the media are so on the side of the government, really. You've got to remember that. So we've just got to change the narrative around inconvenience and strikes. We all benefit from strikes. We all have done. It was a standard 100 years ago to work 6 days a week, and you only have Sunday off to go to church. And we only have strikes to thank for that, and unions. So next time you get to Friday and you say, thank God it's the weekend, don't thank God, thank the unions. That's what I would say.
Interesting, okay. And let's go back to this side, Suzanne. Is there a simple resolution for all of this? You think something could have already been done?
Oh, I wish there was. I mean, I can't think of one. But just going back to what I was saying earlier, I do I do understand why the strikes happen, and I do understand where they're coming from. I think for me is that it also then affects my wages. So I lose pay.
There are ways and means that the unions maybe could sort of work with creating, as Stephen said, better brand image in the press, because the press is no friend of the unions. So maybe talking to other employers that are affected, creating some sort of shared fund where people who can't take part in the strikes but have wages affected, like you were saying, Suzanne, do feel supported, because unions have measures in place that support workers who don't take home a daily wage packet. Why can't that be spread to other people? And then people feel that that's more of a shared fight and a shared sort of goal in the end, which is to improve people's lives, workers' lives more generally.
Fair enough, fair enough. I will say, just in case, I apologise in case that may have suggested any particulars. But if we're saying this about, you know, making this effective and so on, and we have issues raised personally for Suzanne, but is that effectiveness actually coming across for everyone? Is there actually something effectively being done about it and actually causing a change? I can pass it to you guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's no end in sight really for a lot of the strikes, which is a shame. And I think the longer they go on, people are less likely, I don't know really, less likely to get on the side. But I think it's got to be grassroots campaigns, people listening to their friends and family, and people in those positions, and avoiding some of the media speculation and stuff, because that's really not going to help if you only listen to those in positions of power telling you what you should think, I think.
Jasmine?
Probably worth highlighting that these issues are going on at an international level as well, so people around the world are feeling this gripe, and yeah, I think that we can do is just join together as human beings of planet Earth that are no longer happy with the way that the place is being run by, without sounding cliche, the 1%. Call to action.
Interesting. Well, I imagine there might be some different views on this side. Are the strikes being effective, productive? Are we seeing change on this side of the table? What do you guys think?
I think some unions have worked out deals with certain striking parties, and at the moment there seems to be a sort of a bit of a détente with unions and higher education establishments. Less strikes, but more what you might call softer measures like marking boycotts or things like that. So teaching can continue, but other things that's part of the job aren't. That's a way of still showing that there's an issue, but also trying to help students who at the end of the day are suffering as a result of the strikes.
We've got quite a few nodding heads here. So overall then, we'll go around the table, start this end. How far do we agree with the strike action? Do we agree or disagree?
Gosh, I would say, I have to ultimately say that I agree with the strikes, because they, at the end of the day, they're for everybody's benefit. So yes.
Interesting. Lincoln?
Agree.
Agree. Stephen?
Same here. Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and I just hope that more people will get behind the cause.
Interesting. Well, we've got an agree party here. Might have some different views later on with our audience, but thank you very much for that discussion, guys. It's been very good hearing your opinions and for respectfully, as I say, discussing your viewpoints. It's now time for us to move on to the next segment of the show, the head-to-head. Jasmine and Stephen, can you please head over to your podiums and we'll get started shortly. In the head-to-head, we handpick two panellists and we put them against each other, and each person will give us their opinions on a given statement. Sounds easy, right? Well, to make things a little bit more interesting, contestants will only have 30 seconds to go head-to-head with their opinions. So, let's jump straight in. some dramatic music, isn't it? I like that. All right, so, guys, I want a nice, clean fight, OK? No fists being thrown, the language kept PG. This is a family show, right? So, first statement is as follows. Children should not be allowed a mobile phone until the age of 16. Stephen, you'll have 30 seconds to agree or disagree and tell us why. Your time starts now.
Okay, well, I absolutely understand safety implications of children going out into the wider world without a mobile phone. However, I think there are greater dangers of having a mobile phone, and the internet in the modern age is not a safe place for children. Scammers and people like that can get easy access to children if they have a mobile phone. And also things like TikTok and other social media platforms have an age rating of 13 plus. But Ofcom recently discovered that 16% of toddlers had used TikTok recently.
And that's time. Sorry, got to cut you off there. Jasmine, same question. Do we agree or disagree and why? Your time starts now.
So I'd say first you need to classify a mobile phone. So a flip phone I think is a good safety measure. A smartphone can be, you know, incredibly dangerous, not just to the access to the internet, but also to like children's sleep patterns. That can be so harmful. I think the conversation really needs to be broadened out to include sort of gaming, online gaming platforms. I think they're probably amongst the most harmful. The content's quite influential. And of course they can speak to anybody on those platforms. So yeah, I think it should be a broader thing. But flip phones I think are a good shout, you know. It's good to be able to contact children when they're out and about. So yeah, moderation.
Oh, just in the nick of time, thank you. Moving on to our next statement, thank you both. This one is as follows. Parents should have a say on who their children become friends with. Jasmine, I'll stay with you this time. You have 30 seconds to explain, starting now.
So it's a tricky one. Of course, we all want to make sure that our children are keeping good company, but I think sometimes the more that you try and tell somebody to do something, the more they rebel. Speaking from personal experience as well. So my own personal parenting style is more to give my children the tools to be able to make sensible decisions, sort of let them learn from their own mistakes, but be there to pick up the pieces. But just going back to the previous subject, I think it's also worth saying when we're sort of monitoring our children's friendships, really that should be online more than in person, because in-person experiences are invaluable.
And that's time. Stephen, same question. Your 30 seconds starting now.
I somewhat agree with Jasmine. We should definitely look after our children and listen to if they have concerns, be there to listen to them. But I think within the walls of a school and with safeguarding and things like that, we should allow them to make their own decisions. I think that's very important. I think if we try and influence children's decisions too much, we can pass down dangerous stereotypes and biases
10
that
seconds.
we may have from our own experiences growing up. Whereas children should be able to converse with whoever they like and make their own decisions.
3, 2, 1, and just in the nick of time, thank you both very much. Some interesting thoughts to discuss around there, and thank you very much for going head to head and keeping it clean. I appreciate it. Now it's time, if you guys want to come and head back over, we'll move on to the next segment. Thank you for taking your seats. I'm sure you've been wondering whilst watching today, and it's got you thinking, what's your opinion on striking? What would you have said about parenting? Well, now it's your time to voice those opinions in today's Ask the Audience. Here at Agree to Disagree, we went out to the public first to get some ideas of the general feeling towards the cost of living crisis, which has, of course, occurred off the back of COVID and the horrific conflict in Ukraine. When we return, we'll hear what our audience has to say. So, audience, grab your paddles, listen closely. I'll be there shortly, and let's take a look.
I agree. I feel like they're the reason why prices have gone up. So, yeah.
Agree.
Agree, yeah. They have a lot to do.
Disagree, because the government didn't cause it. The war in Ukraine, various other world effects have caused inflation, which the government's got to struggle with.
Totally agree, because they've got no control over it.
Yeah, I'd agree, because obviously everything's going up and we still have sort of the same finance and everything like that, so we're just about trying to make our money go further, and it's a bit of a stress at times.
I agree with it, because they probably implemented certain rules and strategies to make the economy like this. So.
Disagree. You want why? It's a world crisis at the moment. The world economics aren't that good.
I think the government would have a lot of things that it should focus on. I think it's having a huge impact on people, and so it needs to be right at the top of their list.
Yeah, it's a crisis everybody is suffering from at the moment, and a little more help when
energy companies seem to be making a large profit is could be a little bit more equal.
A mixed response from the public there. So, audience, do you agree or disagree that the cost of living crisis should be the government's responsibility? Paddles up now. Let's see what we've got. Got agree, agrees. Oh, lots of agrees. Let's start with you, Josh. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is. I think, they should be helping out the general public, and times can be very tough for people. And you look at wages and then the way that things are inflating in price, and I think that the government should help out with that.
And has it affected you personally, this cost of living crisis as a student?
It has. I wouldn't say it's like overly, been a detriment to my life. I'd say I've had to adapt in certain ways and maybe cut back on spending in certain ways, but I wouldn't say it's been overly impactful on me, but I think on others it probably has been.
Interesting. Let's come to the front here. Beth, you had agree paddle up. What did you think?
I completely agree with everything that Josh said. I mean, it's clear that the government have such a big impact on the world as it is. So.
Yeah, so it should be all governments of the world should be doing more about it when issues like this come up in society.
Mainly the UK
but mainly the UK's one.
But yeah, all governments, I completely agree.
No, thank you very much. Thank you, audience. Paddles at the ready for the next one, and let's hear what the public had to say about our next segment. Let's take a look.
Oh, I heavily agree. Heavily agree. Yeah, the cost of living is not on my side right now.
I disagree because I budget with my money. It's not the money you get in that's the problem, it's what you spend out that's the problem.
I agree, because it's a thing where as a uni student I already struggle with money, and I feel like now it's gotten even worse because I struggle to buy food, or like even going out, that's expensive. So like going out with friends, you can't really be doing that, having a social life, because everything's gone up in price.
At my age, my mental health's fairly strong, and I've lived in much worse conditions post-war. So the fact that we're all digging our allotments at the moment, growing our potatoes as usual and growing everything else, you can avoid some or change your diet. You don't have to keep eating what you always ate because you like it.
I agree, because I've had to be more careful about how I spend my money, and it's been stressful not having enough money at the end of the week to buy my groceries and then having to ask my mother for more money.
Not me personally, but I should imagine it's affected some people, especially people with children who are worried. It's got to affect them mentally.
Oh, I agree, yeah. I've lost a lot of sleep worrying about this stuff, and I think every time I'm in the shops I'm like, oh, okay, if I buy this, or maybe, I'll just buy something else, and then, or I just won't buy it and I'll just, get something tomorrow and thing. It's just constantly doing the maths in my head because of the bills. Constantly, I've been ill because I haven't turned the heating on because I can't afford the bills.
Disagree totally.
I disagree. It's
up to the individual to cope with what comes your way. It's not always a free flow and everything's wonderful. You've got to get your own life in order to cope with things, otherwise you will be stressed out.
Another interesting response there. Over to you guys, audience. So, do you agree or disagree that the cost of living crisis has affected your mental health? Let's see the paddles up now. I'm going to have a quick look. So we've got agrees. Again, a lot of agrees. Oh, there's a mix from Rebecca. Okay, let's start with you, Luke. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I've spent nights sleepless, thinking about if I've got money left on my account, and because of it, sometimes I just can't go out with friends, and so I'm spending nights alone.
So you lose out on that social interaction because of it as well. Okay, interesting. Josh, did you have a disagree up there? Oh, let's have a disagree. Let's have a go.
I mean, obviously it's tough for everyone, but I think, you just got to be positive about things, look at the bright side, and get over any challenges that come your way.
Pass that on to the Prime Minister for us. Look on the bright side of it. Kurt, what did we have up here?
Agree.
We had an agree?
Yeah, I felt myself picking up extra shifts at work, kind of worrying about the budget more. So it's having less time to, as we were saying, be social, go out, and also just free time to relax and enjoy myself.
Exactly. So again, that social element you're losing out on from it. Interesting. Okay. There is definitely a mixed view there, but seems to be some common ground with the issue. Let's see what the general public had to say about this.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's like now I have to be very mindful of the way I spend money. Even recently, it's like I got paid, but I spent money on groceries and that's already taken so much. So yeah, I just have to be very mindful now, which is very stressful.
Totally disagree. I've not changed my living because I've got finances. Because I've looked after my money, I've grown up. So yes, I probably don't do things that I should have done or could have done, but it hasn't affected me, my mental health or anything. I don't worry about it.
Yeah, I agree with that because obviously certain things are probably more costly, so you have to be more like shrewd with the way that you spend your money. So I would say that it's made me be more like aware of how I use my money. Yeah, so I agree.
I'd agree. There's certain changes I've had to make, sort of day to day. Like I've changed sort of the place I'm shopping for food and going out less. I've got a job now to work, earn a bit of money. So yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Disagree. For my personal, hasn't changed anything. So no, I mean we're pensioners. We could always do with a bit more money.
Oh, I absolutely agree because, yeah, couldn't turn the heating on because can't afford the bills. Got ill, I feel the cold really easily and things, stuff like that. Again, changing how I live, changing how I shop and things. So it's massively like that, and yet you've still got, you know, Dishy Rishi and number 10's a billionaire. Like, come on.
I agree because it is hard not to. It influences the food that you buy, the amount that you can go out, influences your lifestyle choices because everything's going up in price.
That one was quite a split there with the public. Let's see if it's the same here in the studio. Audience, do you agree or disagree that the cost of living crisis has forced you all to change the way you live? Let me see those paddles now. And it's another mix here as well. There's a split here too. Let's start with some agrees. Rebecca?
Yeah, I do agree. I do think that I've had to miss out on a lot of things that I would have liked to have done. And it changes your relationships with people because they'll say, please come out and do this, and you want to support them, but you can't because they're saying that they haven't got the money or you haven't got the money. So I've had to change a lot of things socially and with what I buy as well. So yeah.
Okay, interesting. All right, so someone saying again about the social element to it. Luke, was that a disagree panel I saw?
I also disagree, yes.
Why do we disagree?
Well, I'm in a very fortunate position that I haven't really had to change much, just the way I don't do much going out, I don't really travel much, but I know many people who have had to change, but this is just me personally, yes.
So there's how your personal sort of life structure is. It
Yeah.
hasn't detrimented you too much.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so you've managed to save all the pennies.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, who else? What did we have back here? Let me have a look. Let me see again. We had some agrees. We had a disagree again. What do we think, Kurt?
Yeah, so I think just really, I felt myself working a bit more in that kind of respect. Maybe there's been a bit of a change, but because of that, I've not had to change anything else, so there's been no major change, which I'm quite lucky, I think.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And Pranav, we had an agree?
Yeah, so as an international student, you have to think way differently. So it's like this or that. Oh, we have to think not only about cost of living crisis, but we have to think as a student as well. So, yeah.
Interesting, okay. Lots of different elements there. Thank you, audience, for taking part. You can put the panels away. You're safe now. Well, it's fair to say we have had some intriguing minds sharing their opinions today, and I thank you all for it, as they have made a very interesting episode. This is unfortunately all we have time for today. Thank you to my amazing panel, Lincoln, Suzanne, and also to Jasmine and Stephen. Thank you all so much for coming and joining me today. I'd also like to thank our lovely studio audience and you guys at home watching. Until next time, let's agree to disagree. Goodbye. And on time.